Have you ever felt it? That sudden, hot flash of rage over something impossibly small. The spilled coffee that makes you want to scream. The casual comment that feels like a declaration of war. A surge of fiery energy, so intense, so out of proportion, that it terrifies you. So you do what you have always done. You push it down. You swallow the fire. You lock it away in the deepest, darkest cellar of your soul. For the nice person, the people pleaser, the peacekeeper, anger is the most forbidden emotion. We are taught from a young age that our anger is dangerous, that it is destructive, unfeminine, unacceptable. We learn to fear our own fire more than anything else. But the great psychologist Carl Jung issued a profound warning. He taught us that emotions that are not expressed do not simply vanish, especially an emotion as powerful as anger. When banished to the shadow, it does not die. It accumulates. It transforms. It becomes a volatile, unpredictable shadow fire. This hidden fire is the secret source of your unexplained irritability, your sharp judgments, and those sudden shocking explosions that leave you feeling ashamed and out of control. The danger is not your anger. The danger is what happens when you pretend you don't have any. Today, our shadow work takes a courageous turn. We are not going to extinguish the fire. We are going to learn to tend to it, to understand its sacred purpose. To begin this journey, I invite you to acknowledge the fire within, without judgment. In the comments below, simply write, "I am ready to meet my fire." Our fear of anger is not innate. It is a learned response, a lesson taught in the silent curriculum of our childhood. For many of us, especially women, we were handed a very specific script about anger. We saw it modeled in one of two extremes. Either we saw anger as a destructive, terrifying force, a parent's yelling, a door slamming, an energy that shattered the peace and made us feel unsafe. We learned anger is violence. Anger is chaos. To be safe, I must never be angry. Or we never saw it at all. We grew up in a household where anger was the ultimate taboo. It was ignored, denied, or glossed over with platitudes like, "Let's just all be nice." We learned anger is shameful. Anger is unladylike. To be good, I must never be angry. Whether through its terrifying presence or its conspicuous absence, the lesson was the same. Anger is a dangerous emotion. It is to be avoided, controlled, and above all, suppressed. And so, it becomes one of the very first and most powerful residents of our shadow. As we discussed, the shadow is the psychic container for all the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable. Our sadness, our fear, our needs, they are all sent there. But anger is a special kind of exile. It is not just a feeling to be hidden, it is a force to be contained. We don't just put it in the basement. We build a reinforced lead-lined vault around it. We become the wardens of our own inner fire, terrified of what would happen if it ever got out. This is a critical piece of shadow work, to understand that your fear of your own anger is not a personal failing. It is a testament to your loyalty to your original survival program. You learned to suppress your anger because, at one point in your life, it was the intelligent, adaptive, and necessary thing to do to maintain connection and safety. You became a peacekeeper because your environment demanded it. The problem is, you are still running that program long after the environment has changed. Let's go back to Chloe. She grew up with a father who had a volatile temper. His anger was unpredictable, and it filled their home with a constant low-grade tension. As a child, Chloe became a master at sensing the emotional weather. She learned to be quiet, agreeable, and helpful. She learned to make herself small, to never rock the boat. Her compliance was her shield. It was how she kept herself safe. She learned the lesson deeply. Anger is dangerous. My anger could provoke his anger. To survive, I must have no anger. Now, as an adult, Chloe is known for being incredibly patient and calm. She is the person who can handle the most difficult clients at work, the one who never loses her cool. Her persona is one of serene competence. But there is a secret she keeps. Sometimes, alone in her car, stuck in traffic, she feels a surge of rage so intense it makes her hands tremble on the steering wheel. Sometimes she has violent, intrusive thoughts that shock and horrify her. Sometimes she feels a bitter, corrosive resentment towards her husband and children that fills her with immense shame. This is the shadow fire. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke of the unconscious. The anger Chloe so diligently suppressed did not disappear. It was pushed into the shadow, where, without the light of consciousness, it began to fester. It accumulated. It intensified. Like a pressure cooker with a faulty valve, the energy has to go somewhere. The rage she feels in the car, that is the shadow fire, erupting over a trivial trigger because it has no healthy outlet. The violent thoughts, that is the shadow fire expressing its intensity in the only safe place it has, her imagination. The resentment she feels, that is the shadow fire simmering just below the surface, poisoning the very relationships she is trying to protect with her niceness. This is the great paradox of suppressed anger. The very thing we do to keep the peace is what ultimately destroys it. The very energy we suppress to avoid hurting others is what ends up poisoning our connections from the inside out. Your fear of your anger is understandable. You're afraid of becoming the person who hurt you. You're afraid of that door-slamming, peace-shattering force. You equate the immense power of your inner fire with the destructive way you may have seen it modeled. But this is where the most profound reframe in this shadow work journey begins. As taught by Carl Jung and the wisdom traditions, anger itself is not the problem. Anger is not inherently destructive. In its purest form, anger is a neutral, life-affirming energy. It is a messenger. It is a physiological and spiritual alarm system designed to tell you one simple, vital thing. A boundary has been crossed. Something important to you is being threatened. Your integrity, your values, your safety, your well-being. Anger is the guardian at the gates of your own soul. It is the sacred fire that rises up to say, no, this far and no further. It is the energy that fuels action. It is the power to protect what you love. It is the force that says, this is not right, and I will do something to change it. When you look at it this way, anger is not a monster. It is a loyal, powerful, and absolutely essential ally. It is the part of you that is most fiercely dedicated to your own well-being. So the question is not, how do I get rid of my anger? The question is, how did I become so disconnected from this vital part of my own life force? And how can I begin to build a relationship with it that is based not on fear, but on respect and wisdom? This is the work of learning to tend to your own sacred fire.
So we have this sacred fire, this powerful life-affirming messenger, locked away in the dungeon of our shadow. But the laws of the psyche, much like the laws of physics, state that energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. And this is the core of the warning. The anger that you do not consciously feel and healthily express does not go away. It metastasizes. It leaks out sideways, twisting itself into 3 common toxic forms. These are the signature expressions of the shadow fire. Learning to recognize them is a crucial step in your shadow work. The first and most common form is passive aggression. Passive aggression is the art of expressing anger without ever admitting you are angry. It is the native language of the peacekeeper who is secretly furious. It looks like sarcasm disguised as a joke, the accidental forgetting of a promise, the silent treatment, procrastinating on a task someone has asked you to do, or the classic saying, "It's fine," when your tone of voice clearly indicates that it is in fact not fine at all. Each of these is a small leak from the pressure cooker. It is the shadow's attempt to communicate hostility without triggering the conscious mind's alarm system about being an angry person. It feels safer than direct confrontation, but it is deeply corrosive to true intimacy. It creates an atmosphere of confusion and mistrust, because what is being said on the surface is not what is being felt underneath. When you find yourself engaging in passive aggression, it is a clear signal. Your shadow fire is trying to send a message that you are too afraid to deliver directly. The second form the shadow fire takes is harsh judgment. This can be judgment of others or judgment of ourselves. When we have a reservoir of unexpressed anger inside, it has to find a target. And the easiest targets are the people around us. This is the shadow work concept of projection in action. As Carl Jung taught, we see in others what we cannot see in ourselves. If you are furious about being overworked and underappreciated, but cannot express it, you might find yourself becoming intensely irritated by a coworker who leaves work early. You project your own longing for rest and boundaries onto them, and then you judge them for it. Or you might find yourself becoming your own worst critic. The unexpressed anger you feel towards someone else gets turned inward, transforming into a vicious inner voice that attacks you for every small mistake. This is called retroflexion. It is anger turned against the self. So many of us who struggle with low self-worth are not actually lacking in value. We are simply drowning in our own rerouted anger. The third form is the most dramatic and often the most shameful. It is the uncontrolled eruption. This is the pressure cooker finally exploding. After days, weeks, or even years of swallowing your anger, of being patient, of keeping the peace, you snap. It is almost always over something small and insignificant. The misplaced keys, the spilled milk, the traffic jam. And a torrent of rage comes out that is so intense, so powerful, it shocks everyone around you, most of all yourself. In that moment, you become the very thing you have always feared, the out-of-control, destructive, angry person. The shame that follows this eruption is immense. You think, "See, I was right. My anger is dangerous. I must keep it locked away." And so you reinforce the walls of the prison. You double the guards. You push the fire even deeper into the shadow, which only guarantees that the pressure will build again and another eruption will inevitably occur. Let's check back in with Chloe. She started her journey. She said a micro-no to a small request at work, and she felt that wave of guilt, but she also felt a flicker of something else, empowerment.
But later that week, she finds herself in a familiar dynamic. Her husband, exhausted from his own day, makes a slightly sarcastic comment about the house being messy. The old Chloe would have felt a sting, but would have just quietly started cleaning up, swallowing her feelings. But the new Chloe, the one who is just beginning her shadow work, feels something different. She feels the hot flash of anger. She hears the messenger. A boundary has been crossed. My efforts are being disrespected. But the old program, the fear of conflict, is still strong. So she doesn't say anything directly. Instead, later that evening, when he asks where the TV remote is, she says, with a sweet but sharp tone, "I don't know, I'm not your maid." That is passive aggression, the shadow fire leaking out. Later, she's scrolling online and sees a friend posting pictures of her beautiful, relaxing vacation. Chloe feels a wave of intense, judgmental irritation. Must be nice. Some of us actually have to work. That is projection. Her anger at her own lack of rest is being projected onto her friend. And the next morning, when her child accidentally spills a glass of juice on the floor, she erupts. She yells in a way that is far more intense than the situation warrants. The child starts to cry, and Chloe is immediately flooded with overwhelming guilt and shame. She sees her father's rage in her own actions. She thinks, "I am a monster." But she is not a monster. She is a woman with a powerful, much neglected fire inside of her. And these three events, the passive aggression, the judgment, and the eruption, are not signs of her failure. They are a map. They are the symptoms pointing directly to the core wound. They are the smoke signals telling her exactly where the sacred fire is being suppressed. This is the compassionate lens of shadow work. These behaviors are not who you are. They are simply information. They are the language of your shadow fire desperately trying to communicate with you. And the next step is to learn how to translate it.
So, we have this map. The smoke signals of passive aggression, of judgment, of eruptions. They are all pointing to a single location. The site of your sacred, suppressed fire. The old program, the one that has been running your whole life, tells you to fear this fire, to douse it, to contain it, to run from it. The new path, the path of shadow work, invites you to do the opposite. It invites you to turn towards the fire, not to be consumed by it, but to become its keeper. This is a profound shift. We are moving from a relationship of fear to a relationship of respect. The goal of this work is not to release your anger in a destructive way upon others. That is simply the behavior of the untended, unconscious shadow fire. The goal is to build a conscious relationship with your anger, to learn to feel its heat, to understand its message, and to channel its immense energy in a way that is creative and life-affirming. As the great thinker Carl Jung might suggest, we must learn to alchemize this raw energy, to turn the lead of raw rage into the gold of conscious action. So how do we begin this alchemy? How do we approach a force we have been taught to fear our entire lives? We start by listening to its whispers long before it becomes a roar. We learn to track the sparks before they become a wildfire. I'm going to share with you a foundational practice for this work. I call it mapping the flicker. This is not about analyzing your anger in the moment. It is about becoming a curious, compassionate scientist of your own inner world. All you need is a small notebook and the willingness to pay attention. For 1 week, this is your only task. Your mission is to notice the smallest flickers of irritation, annoyance, or frustration. These are the pilot lights of your larger fire.
We so often dismiss them. Oh, I'm just stressed. It's not a big deal. But in shadow work, we learn that there are no small feelings. There are only messengers, and some speak more quietly than others. So when you feel that flicker, I invite you to pause for just a moment. And in your notebook, you are going to map it by answering 3 simple questions. Question 1. What was the trigger? Be specific and non-judgmental. My partner interrupted me while I was speaking. My child ignored my request to pick up their toys. A car cut me off in traffic. I saw an email from my boss after work hours. You are simply recording the data. Question 2. Where do I feel this in my body? Anger is a physical, energetic experience. Get out of your head and into your body. Does your jaw clench? Does your shoulders tighten and rise towards your ears? Do you feel a heat in your chest or a knot in your stomach? Does your breathing become shallow? You are learning the unique physical signature of your anger. You are learning its language. And question 3, the most important question. What boundary of mine was just crossed or threatened? This is the key that unlocks the message. Anger always points at a boundary. Let's look at the triggers again. My partner interrupted me. The boundary of being heard and respected was crossed. My child ignored my request to pick up their toys. The boundary of mutual effort and household order was crossed. A car cut me off in traffic. The boundary of physical safety was threatened. An email from my boss after hours? The boundary between my work life and my personal time was crossed. Do you see the pattern? Your anger is not random. It is not a flaw. It is a highly intelligent, exquisitely precise guidance system. It is the loyal guardian pointing its fiery sword directly at the place where your integrity is being compromised. As you spend a week simply mapping these flickers, something profound will begin to happen. First, you will stop judging yourself for feeling irritated. You will start to see these feelings not as a problem, but as valuable information. You are moving from shame to curiosity. Second, you will begin to develop a new level of self-awareness. You will start to see the patterns. You will realize you feel a flicker of anger every single time a certain person makes a self-deprecating joke, because it crosses your boundary of wanting to see the people you love honor themselves. You will realize you feel a flicker of anger every time you say yes to something when your body is screaming no, because you have crossed your own boundary of self-honoring. This is the beginning of tending to your fire. You are not acting on the anger. You are not suppressing the anger. You are simply being with it. You are honoring its message. You are acknowledging its truth. This practice is the foundation for all healthy expression of anger. Because once you can calmly identify the boundary that has been crossed, you can then choose, from a place of conscious power rather than reactive rage, how to address it. You can move from the toxic expressions of the shadow fire, the passive aggression, the judgment, the eruptions, to the clean, clear, and powerful expression of your authentic self. You might eventually say to your partner, "Hey, it's important for me to feel I can finish my thought. Can you please try not to interrupt me?" That is the gold of conscious action. It is clear, It is respectful. It is powerful. And it was made possible because you first had the courage to honor the flicker of your own sacred fire. This is the path of the spiritual warrior. Not to be without anger, but to be a master of its sacred energy. To know that within this fire, which you were taught to fear, lies your greatest power. The power to protect your peace, the power to speak your truth, and the power to create a life that is in true alignment with your soul.
Today, we have stood at the edge of the fire, the sacred shadow fire of our own suppressed anger. And we have learned that it is not a monster to be feared, but a messenger to be understood. We have learned that our fear of anger is a learned program, a relic from a past where our compliance was our safety. We have uncovered the warning of Carl Jung that anger, when banished to the shadow, does not disappear. It transforms into the toxic smoke of passive aggression, harsh judgment, and uncontrolled eruptions. But most importantly, we have learned to reframe anger itself. It is not a destructive force. It is the loyal guardian of our boundaries, a vital, life-affirming energy that points us directly to where our truth is being compromised. This is the heart of this radical shadow work. The practice of mapping the flicker is your first step in becoming the keeper of your own fire. It is a gentle, compassionate way to build a new relationship with this powerful part of yourself. A relationship based not on fear and suppression, but on curiosity, respect, and wisdom. By honoring the sparks, you prevent the wildfire. But there is another layer to this. What happens when the fire rises, when the boundary is crossed, but the threat is so overwhelming that even the guardian of anger feels powerless? What happens when the perceived risk of conflict feels so great that our system chooses not to fight, but to appease? There is another survival response, another shadow shield that we as peacekeepers have mastered. It is the response of fawning, of becoming so agreeable, so helpful, so attuned to the needs of the other, that we neutralize the threat by abandoning ourselves completely. Why do we do this? What is the deep biological mechanism behind this ultimate act of self-betrayal? That is the profound territory we will explore together tomorrow, on day 5 of our journey. For this week, your invitation is to become a cartographer of your inner fire. Become a scientist of the sparks. Find the small notebook, and for the next few days, simply map the flickers. Notice the trigger. Feel it in your body. Name the boundary. That is all. The work is in the compassionate observation. To solidify this practice and to join a community of fellow fire tenders, I invite you to share one small insight in the comments below. You don't need to share the story. Just share the boundary. For example, my boundary of rest, my boundary of being heard, my boundary of respect. By naming the boundary, you honor the message of the fire. You affirm that you are worthy of protection, and you take the first crucial step toward turning your most feared emotion into your most powerful ally. Thank you for your immense courage. Your true power is awakening.